nesinus koyach, but rather hisarus milamailo, right? An arousal from above. Because what we learned last time, after learning the Rebbe's explanation of the whole inyan of the response of the king in the field, and teaching us that it's not a response of the king in the field, right? It's not the king responding to our RB Ani L'Dodi, but rather it's the king responding to our desire to come to see him, but we haven't come to see him yet. He accepts that graciously, which arouses in us a greater desire to do that which we've decided is important to do. Zvi, now we're learning. Not Chassidus. Close up the Chassidus. We learn the Chassidus because the Rebbe wants us to. Now the Rebbe wants us to learn a Maamer. It's like saying Tehillim during Chazar Hashatz. On one hand, I get it, right? You know, you're sitting there not doing anything. On the other hand, who told you to say Tehillim? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said you should say Tehillim every day. Okay, and the Rebbe made a big shturim, and we say Tehillim every day. Do they want you saying that during Chazar Hashatz? No. Okay, so then I'm not really, what am I accomplishing exactly by doing that, right? Like on one end, no, I'm saying that. It's short today, don't worry. It's very short. Right, it was about 2 bus stops today. The whole year. So we learned that the king responds to our desire, which heightens our desire. The second response of the king is a revelation of his etzem connection to us, his essential connection to us, and that his essential pleasure is in our very existence. That arouses in us an appreciation of the fact that our essential pleasure is in his existence. Okay, so that sounds like it's all coming from above. And then we manage to go to the field. Then we go see the king. So why is it only in a sinus koyach? It seems to be Yisarus. And the Rebbe said very, very clearly yesterday that it's Yisarus. Right? No question. Right? And the Rebbe said the very fact that the king's in the field arouses in the subject a desire to go see the king. So the whole mashal is interesting in terms of relating to the being a mashal, a parable for the fact that the king is giving us the ability to go see him. He's accessible, but he's not arousing in us a desire to go see him. The king is coming to the field. He's coming to the field, as the footnote we saw yesterday says. He's coming to the field dafka because he wants to be with us. And that's going to arouse in us a desire to go see him. Right? There's signs all over. King so-and-so arrives at gun soccer to meet with his subjects. Everybody's going. It's just the way it is. Right? Okay. Then we learned the difference between, we started the discussion of Kel, the first of the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Meaning, Melech Basada is all a mushal for the revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim in Elul. So we have to understand what the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim are about. Like, what does that mean? So there's a certain level of godly reality that is revealed more powerfully in Elul than at any other time. And revelation means more accessible. That's what revelation means, by definition. God's everywhere all the time. There is no place devoid of him, Chazal say. Leis aser panu iminei. Everything's the Eibishter, right? Einod milvadei. There's nothing but him. So then what does revelation mean? He's everywhere. Revelation means he's easier to access. When he's concealed, so he's hard to access. So there are places of revelation and times of revelation where we find it easier to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It takes less effort to be sensitive to his presence in our midst. There are other times of tremendous concealment, and in those times it takes unbelievable work to be sensitive to his presence. He's always there. Right? Doesn't go anywhere. As a matter of fact, there's a Maamer that we've discussed a number of times in different forms. It's Rosh Hashanah, Tafshin Lamed Gimel, where the Rebbe says that Dir B'Tachtonim, a dwelling place in the lower realms, when did that come into existence? The moment the Eibishter created the world. What is the world Be'etzim? It's a dwelling place for God in the lower realms. That's what it is. But I thought he wants us to do a Veda to bring that about. No, he doesn't want us to do a Veda to bring that about because it's already there. Meaning when a Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at the world, what does he see? Concealment? He sees himself. He knows what's here. He knows what reality is. What does he want? He wants you and I should see it. It should be revealed to us. That's our Veda. Right. So the world's Elokos. That's what it is. Right. Okay. But there are times when the Kadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself more, and that's Elul. Also, not only Elul, but that's what we're discussing. And that revelation is called the Yud Gemidas Rachmim, and the source of that, all of that or, is that place called Kel, which we saw yesterday, the first of the 13 Midas. Again, yesterday we talked about this. Havaya, Lefi Chassidus are not counted as part of the 13 Midas. They're just the introduction to, and the first Midah is Kel, and that's the source of it all. And included in Kel are all of the Midas. That's the Rebbe told us twice. So what's Kel? Or Ein Sof. And then the Rebbe explained the difference between Or and Shefa. Unadulterated light, and the light that's all about being drawn down to be clothed in a particular kli. Right? The mashal we use is the intellect of a teacher. The teacher can just reveal everything he thinks. That's Or. Shefa is the teacher teaching what he understands to his students in a way the students can understand it. It'll go into their kelim, to their intellect. That's called Shefa. Here we're talking about Or. Unbelievably powerful Or. And that Or is the essence of you and me. It's the Rebbe didn't say it's the essence. I take that back. I'm sorry. It's the Sar and the Moshel. It's that which governs us. In terms of who we are down here in Eilam Hazeh, what's the governing? And this is not just Elul, this is always. Right? What's the governing power of a Yid? Kel. That's why, what are we called? The Rebbe explained our name. Yisrael. And what does Yisrael mean, the Rebbe said? Yud. Sar. Kel. Yefeh. Yud is constant. Something that's always there. Sar, a minister. Kel. What's Yisrael? Someone who's minister, someone whose governing power is Kel. That level of godliness. That's who we are. We have a hard time tapping into that. Okay, that's a separate discussion. We do. We find it's not always. It's always difficult to appreciate that and experience that and live that. Right? The first thing we have to do is understand it intellectually. If we don't understand it intellectually, nothing will ever happen. That's who we are. Okay. And if I don't know that I have a soul, I'm going to miss a lot in life. Okay, I know I have a soul. How much do I appreciate that soul, and do I experience that soul? That's a different question. It's there. Now, and I don't. I mean this seriously. I don't experience my spleen very much. I have one. I don't even know what it does. Anybody know what a spleen does? Yeah, what is it?
It stores red blood cells.
Oh yeah, it makes and stores. And so, what does it connect to? Meaning, where do things come from and go to from the spleen?
Your lymphatic system.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. No, we have all this stuff in there. Like, it's all doing something, right? I think the only thing that doesn't do anything is tonsils, right? I mean, they say I can't quite figure out why we have tonsils. And when I was a kid, everybody had them out. They don't do that anymore. But people get a sore throat as an 8-year-old, and they go, tonsillitis, and they go to the hospital, and they take out your tonsils, and you got to get a popsicle as if you had your tonsils taken out. I went and had my tonsils taken out, and I was very disappointed because they told me we didn't take out your tonsils, we took out your adenoids. I said, okay, fine. I can't say that I noticed the difference.
But the X-ray?
No.
Right.
No. Wasn't a serious enough operation. Chutzpah, you know. Seriously, it's true. It's why I remember it.
To be fair, I got tonsillitis a couple years ago. It was like the most sick I've ever felt. It's crazy.
No, it's terrible. But they don't take out your tonsils anymore. They give you antibiotics and you're done. Okay. Can you imagine if they took out people's COVID when they had COVID? They have to find it first to take it out. Okay. Seder. So that's who we are, and that's what we're really about. And Elul is a revelation of all of that. And so there's a revelation from above of who we really are. And the Rebbe says in the last two lines an incredibly important thing. And to a certain degree, this is the end of the beginning of the Maamer. Like, this is the end of the first part of the Maamer. Because the Rebbe is now going to discuss something else. I mean, it's all the same discussion. The Rebbe is going to spend a great deal of time now on the ledodi of it. We just finished describing the Ani L'Dodi of it. We don't know why Ani L'Dodi is first. That we still have that question. Why is it first? It should be Dodi Leave Ani Loi. But what is Ani L'Dodi? So the Rebbe says at the end of the paragraph we learned yesterday, that amazing line. What's Elul? The revelation of who Ani really is. And then mamela, consequently, what does ani want? Ledodi. As soon as I figure out who I am, I know what I want. I just don't know who I am. So I'm, but and in all fairness, and it's just true. What do Jews generally spend their time doing? Looking for themselves, right? 35% of cult members in the United States are Jewish. 2% of the population, 35% of the cult members. Why? Because what are Jews? They're looking, who is Ani, right? They want to find Ani. And they're looking over here and they're looking over there and they're looking, most of them, unfortunately, are looking in the wrong places. But they're looking like crazy. They're driven by this desire to find who Ani is and what Ani is supposed to do. Some people get lucky and end up in yeshiva or start in yeshiva, right? And others don't, right? But who's Ani? Ani is someone who's naturally interested in Elokus. And that's why that experience feels so real and natural to the Yidden who run into it later in life. You say, oh, yeah, like this seems to fit. Oh, yeah, it does. It's who you are. It's who we all are. V'yesh lemer. So in Oy Zion now, the Rebbe is a slightly different direction. Obviously, the same general idea based on everything we saw, but we've seen so far, but a new issue. V'yesh lemer, because remember, Doidi Li in the beginning of the Alter Rebbe's Maamer was Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Now Doidi Li has also taken on this whole new reality. Yeah, and the Alter Rebbe mentions it, but the Rebbe has turned it into something quite astounding, is the revelation of Yud Gimel Sarachmi. V'yesh lemer, Dal Yadei Shagilui the Yud Gimel Sarachmi, by virtue of the fact that the revelation of the Yud Gimel Sarachim Ma'erer arouses, and the Rebbe is not pulling any punches, it's arousing, and that's why the Rebbe said it the first time. He used Lehit Orer the first time, because that's really what it is. It's a Hisarus and an Asinas Kayak. And after saying it once, the Rebbe then ignored the Hisarus part until we got to the level we're at now, where we understand that it's taka an arousal from above. Shagilud Yunus Sarachim Ma'erer Umegala Harotzen Apnimi d'Yisrael. It arouses and reveals the inner desire of a Jew. Sharotzen d'Yisrael be'elokus. The desire of a Jew in godliness. Why do you and I want elokus? Lefi shehem mushroshim b'atzmos. Because we're rooted in atzmos, in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our true being is to a certain degree indistinguishable from his being. We talked yesterday about the 3 different levels of Keser, right? Was it yesterday?
Yes.
Maybe, yeah, yesterday? Right. So we didn't talk about Amunah so much. Everybody asked, what's the 3rd one? Okay, fine, a reasonable question. So now, those 3 levels correspond to 3 levels of Elokus also, okay? And you've probably heard of them, and I don't want to admit this publicly being recorded, but I don't want to get up out of my chair and write them on the board. If I have to, I will, and don't feel sorry for me. But at this point, I'm not going to. If you tell me, can you write those down? I will. And don't be afraid to say that if you really want to see them. But you might have already seen them. That's why I'm wasting your time saying what I just said. Arech Anpin. Right? That's Arech. Okay, show him that look says, I've never heard that. Here, you love this. Shalom, I will, just like I always remember the ice cream. We're going from the bottom up, okay? Arech, Atik, and what's called Radla. That's how you'll see it in my Myra, okay? Which means Resha, Deloy Yada, Veloy Is Yada. What does that mean? What is that? Okay? Atik is also Atik Yemin, and Arech is Arech Anpin. So sometimes you'll see Aleph, Aleph, and that'll be Arach Anpin. What are these? 3 levels of Kesser. This is the level of Kesser, usually called the lower level of Kesser. Sometimes it's called the Chitzonius of Kesser, the external expression of Kesser. And what does external mean? External means the function of something. Right? We've talked about this many times.
Now this is the 3 level of Keter or 3 level of
Keter.
Elokus?
3 levels of Keter. Right?
Yesterday we were talking about
Yesterday we were talking about Ratzon, Tainu, and Emunah, which are 3 levels of Kesser. Those are also the 3 crowns of the 3 heads of the crown. Now, these are the official technical names of those 3 levels of Elokus. It's a level called Arach Anpin, which means the long countenance, the long face. There's something called Za'ir Anpin. Zo, right? The 6 meters in between. There's Chochmah, Bina, Zo. That's how people say it. What's Zo? Za'ir Anpin, the small face. The 6 midot, 6 emotional attributes, and then Malchus. Okay? In Yud Ke Vav Ke, Yud is Chochmah, K is Bina, the Vav is drawing the energy of Bina down from the upper level Hay to the lower level Hay. What is that? The 6 meters, Vav. And what are they called? Zo. Ze'ir Anpin, the small face. Arech is the long face. Okay, so what is Arech Anpin? The level of Kesser that is the source of the light that comes into Elul Atzilus, the world of emanation, which is the source of which is the beginning of the 4 worlds. Atzilus, B'nai Yitzir, right? So now, what's unique about Elul Atzilus? We've learned this before, but love to anybody here. I know we go through this. We're going to learn Basi Lagani at some point, and in Basi Lagani, this is all talked about at great length. The first place of Basi Lagani, the Friedberg Basi Lagani. Seder Ishtalshlitz. When we say Seder Ishtalshlitz, that, you want to ask a question? No. That place of orderly, I'm going to sit down myself. That place of orderly downward emanation of godliness. Right? 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of form, the world of action. Okay? What's unique about that reality? There's a certain type of light that exists in that reality. It's called Or Mimale, right? The light that fills Kalim, meaning heavy tzimtzum. Right? A lot of tzimtzum in that light. Right? The light that shefa, in other words, relative to what we've been talking about, that light is really all just shefa, a level of light that's commensurate to the kli, the vessel that it's going to be clothed in and revealed through, because that's what vessels do. Vessels were kalim. I'm not going to use the word vessels. Kalim. Okay, what do kalim do? They reveal light. Amnon can tell you about his very colorful book.
Sorry, I'm confused. The 3 level of Keter and Elokus now is the same?
Kesser is a level in Elokus. There's more than 3 levels of Elokus. One of the levels in Elokus is called Kesser.
Okay.
That
Which one
particular level has 3 levels. These are the 3 different levels of Kesser. Just like we said yesterday, Ratzon, Tainug, and Amunah are 3 aspects of Kesser. Well, those 3 aspects of Kesser relate to these 3 different levels of godly reality. The reason we're going through this is we want to understand what do we mean that we're Mushrash and Atzmus.
Me
The
too.
Rebbe just told us that we're rooted in Atzmus. We have to know what that means.
Which one is connected to Ratzon and which one is connected to
We're going to get there. We're not there yet. Okay? Now, those 4 worlds, what's unique about those 4 worlds? Or Mamale, light that fills. So to speak, finite light. Light that expresses itself in finite. What allows light to express itself in finite? Something called a kli. Right? What's the mashal for that? Where's your book on it? Here, we'll use this. We'll use this. No, let's use your pink book. We'll do your pink book. Can I have just without all those papers in it? Can I have your pink book for a second? This is the gray. Gray's too boring. Okay? We've done this so many times, but we'll do it again. But it's so important to do. The light, this is physical light, and physical light works the way it works, so you and I will understand the way godly light works, because godly light is not light. Light is a parable to explain how godly energy works. We call it light. Why? Because it works just like physical light. Right? Okay, so that's our parable for godliness. The light out here is colorless. There's light out here, right? Here, there's light right here. I'll show you. Here, it's bouncing off Unlun's book. Okay, the light out here is colorless. When it hits this kli, what aspect of light, what aspect of that light is revealed? The pink of it, which is really red, right? It's red with a twist. Okay? What's red? Well, red's a primary color. Okay. Are there red photons in the light out here? Yep. Sure are. Can you see them out here? Nope. Sure can't. Why not? No kli. There's no vessel revealing them. The only vessel revealing the light out here are the dust particles that, the light's bouncing off, so we get this experience of light in between us. If we were in space, it would be dark in between us. It must be a very, very bizarre experience. I don't know. Like, all you would see would be people's faces and bodies, but it would be completely dark in between us, like a spotlight on them. Why? Well, there'd be nothing for the light to reflect off in between. The light's reflecting off the dust particles, etc. Sunset is watching the light refract through the atmosphere in a much more powerful way in terms of our angle of it than it does when it's in the middle of the sky, so we see a lot more colors. Pollution makes for great sunsets. There's just all sorts of stuff that the light is bouncing off of and making. Oil also turns sunlight into a prism, right? Oil in water, right? If there's oil in the water and the sun is here, sometimes you'll see all the colors. Okay, so what's this thing doing? This is revealing the pink in light. What else is it doing? Hiding every other aspect of the light. The light out here can be expressed infinitely. There's an infinite amount of colors in the light out here, right? There's no end to the amount of colors. Just add another drop of white, another drop of black. I mean, you just keep doing that forever, basically. Okay. So there's, for all intents and purposes, an infinite amount of color that's hidden in the light out here. It hits a kli. What does the kli do? Reveals one aspect of it and hides the infinite aspect of it. Well, that's what Kalim do. Kalim take godly reality, which when it's just unadulterated light, it's revealing itself in an infinite way, and allows that infinite light to express itself in finite. That's what's happening right here. Right? This time of month, what do you see in the sky very, very clearly at night? Moon. Big moon. Everybody's probably very excited about the what do they call it? Likui. The what?
The eclipse.
Eclipse. Right? Very interesting. Someone sent me a letter that night. How we don't make a bracha on the eclipse. The letter from the Rebbe. We don't make a bracha on the eclipse. Aleph, because it's not written in Chazal anywhere to make a bracha on an eclipse. And Chazal knew what an eclipse was. I'm sure they'd seen one. And base, it's a sign of negative things to come. So we don't celebrate it. I don't understand how God runs the world. I have no clue.
Where does that come from?
Kabbalah. But simple shot. Who was Am Yisrael compared to? The moon. What's the eclipse of the moon?
Covering up.
Yeah, covering up something that shouldn't be covered up. Right? Even though the Rebbe in the letter actually also mentions the same thing about Likui Chama. There are places that say Likui Chama is bad for the non-Jews, and Likui Yereach, solar eclipse is bad for the nations of the world, and a lunar eclipse is bad for us. In this letter, the Rebbe just talks about both of them. He says we don't make a bracha on both, and both are signs of Puranut. Now the Rebbe doesn't say, now the Puranut might be to that part of the world, this part of the world. The Rebbe doesn't say. He says it's not, but he does mention Likui Yereach. It's not good for Jews.
Next morning there is a Thursday.
That's certainly true. That's what I was going to say. Now, none of us explain anything because we don't understand anything. But it is interesting. That's what happened the next day. That morning. It's just interesting. What you said. It's not interesting to the people it happened to, but you know what I mean. It's not interesting to anything, any of us. But okay, so that's how kalim work. That thing you see in the sky called the moon, what's it doing? It's reflecting sunlight, right? I mean, we know that. It doesn't have light of its own. It's reflecting sunlight. How far away is the sun? 93 million miles away. Actually, I guess 93 million and 250,000, because it's 93 million miles from us, and we're 240,000 from the moon. That's what they say, right? Okay, so it's 93 million miles away. And the light of the sun travels through that space, reflects off the moon, and you see the sunlight reflecting off the moon. If you look to the right of the moon, I'm just picking a side, you can look right or left depending on time of month. You look to the right of the moon, what's there? Light or dark? Dark, pitch black. What's that space full of? Sunlight. It's full of sunlight. Why? Well, the sunlight's coming from here to here. So what's this whole space full of? Sunlight. Right? How do you know? Well, when the moon moves over here, it's going to reveal the sunlight that's over here, right? Over here, when the moon's here, you don't see the sunlight over here. Why not? What's missing? You can tell me now. What's missing? Kalim. In physics, what's missing? Atmosphere. Right? Right? It's above the atmosphere, so it's a vacuum up there. Okay, so there's no kalim for it to reflect off. Sometimes you and I, even with the naked eye, see some satellite fly through that space very quickly, and it looks like a falling star or something. All of a sudden there'll be a piece of light that goes, whoa, what's that? That's interesting. Most people say, oh, it's a falling star. Sometimes it is, but usually it isn't. Falling stars take longer and they're more spectacular. Usually it's just a satellite flying through there, and somehow the angle is right that you could see that little speck of light that flew through there. Well, there's satellites up there, right? There's all sorts of stuff up there. Okay. What is that? What do they call them? Asteroid? Asteroids. And the asteroid's on its way to Earth and it's going to blow us all up! Before or after the climate kills us? We don't know. We're not sure. We're not sure. What is the thing that they're using right now to scare us all? Still climate?
War.
Jews. No, you're not going to be right, you know. No, they're so focused on us, they forgot about...
It was climate. Now
It was climate. No, look, I've been around longer than anybody here, right? Okay, so what is that? There's advantages and disadvantages for that. One of the advantages is you see, after a while you realize this, I'm not into the conspiracy of it, just reality. What they call the mainstream media, but it's not just the mainstream media, it's a whole, reality that tries to shape people's consciousness. Since I was a kid, it's been changing, but they're always selling something that will make everybody afraid. All right? When I was a kid, it was starvation. There's not going to be enough food for the world. We're all going to die. We're not going to be able to feed ourselves. Right? That was big. Right? Don't have kids, in other words. Don't have kids because there's too many people. And we're all going to die of starvation. Okay, now there was a serious starvation issue when I was a kid, right? I mean, India, unbelievable starvation in India, China, but I mean, that was mostly Mao just killing 100 million of his own people by starving them, right? The glory of socialism, right? But there were people starving. There were people starving in Africa. There are still people who don't eat enough. But Baruch Hashem, the biggest health problem in the world is now what? Obesity. They were selling, when I was a kid, they were selling that we're all going to die and starve because there won't be enough food. Well, they were wrong on that one. So now there's 4 times as many people as there were when I was a kid. There were 2 billion when I was a kid. Right? Now there's 8 billion. Right? Okay. And everybody's overweight. Right? Okay. So the food thing didn't happen. And you go through and you'll see like every 10, 15 years, they change what it is they're talking about that's going to scare you to death. Of course, there was a big one that was overriding for quite a while until about, mid-80s. nuclear war, that the Americans and the Russians are going to nuke us all into oblivion. That was also there. It's just so interesting. You know, what you're saying is so interesting. Now they're distracted by us, and so they're not talking about all the other stuff. It's so fascinating.
Climate stuff dropped off the map.
Dropped off the map. No, we said it yesterday. You weren't here yesterday, but I don't know whether I said it in Gemara or I said it in Chumash.
It's like that's a whole new thing.
Right? But someone sent me one of those little, those little cartoon things with that idiot from up there in Scandinavia, and they said, why is she so excited about a Palestinian state? The world's ending in 6 years anyway, isn't it? So like, what's the battle all about? She forgot about that battle. That's so interesting. Hating the Jews sort of pushed everything else out of the consciousness of the people who want to scare us to death. Anyway, back to our 3 levels of Kesser. But before we get to levels of Kesser, we have to understand Mamale. We just brought a mashal for Mamale. The same light is revealing itself as red over here. The same light is revealing itself as blue over there. Why? Because the Kli is responsible for the revealed reality that you see, even though it's all coming from a uniform source. The same light is hitting all these places, right? Meaning you might say, how many sources of light are there in this room? I mean, after all, there's blue over here and red over here and pink. There are at least 3 others. Brown over there. There's orange over there. There's some green over there. There must be at least 3 or 4 sources of light in this room. No. There's only one source of light. I mean, say, okay, but right, there's one basic source of light in this room. It just happens to be expressing itself in all sorts of different ways. There's one God, and he just expresses himself in all of these different ways down here in Olam Hazeh. And all that different expression is a function of those things that you and I call kelim. What level of light is that relevant to and relative to? Mamale, light that fills. What does it fill? Kelim. Okay. Why am I saying all that? Because now we can understand what Kesser is. Kesser is Kesser is a level of Sovev. Light that's too powerful to be clothed in a vessel and is all surrounding. What you and I will call infinite light.
Keter in general.
Sovev. I didn't say Kesser yet. We'll get there. Sovev. Right? Light that surrounds, light that encompasses, also sometimes called makif, right? Which means to surround. What do you do on Simchas Torah? What are those things you do? Called hakafot. What are you doing? Surrounding the bima. You're going around the bima, right? Okay. Kesser is a general name for that level of light. Kesser is, of the 10 spheres, Kesser is Sovev. All the other spheres are Mamale. Chochmah is the beginning of Or Mamale. Where does Or Mamale begin? Chochmah of Atzilus. In the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, it's already a world where light is clothed in vessels. What are the vessels? 10 spheres. So there's now an expression of the infinite godly light. What's in there? Everything. What's now revealed? Chesed is revealed, Gvura is revealed, Tiferes is revealed, Chochmah and Bina are revealed. All these different aspects of godly light. They were in there. They're all in there, but they're in there subsumed in this infinite reality. And what that looks like, I don't know. You and I don't know what infinite looks like. We don't even have a name for it. We just call it not finite. Okay. But it's all there. It's just what allows it to be revealed? Kelim, the Kli of Chochmah. It's called sphere, the sphere of Chochmah, the sphere of Bina. Okay. What's the source, the direct source of Chochmah of Atzilus? The direct source of the first level of what's called Or Mimale, light that fills a Kli. Arech. The lowest level in Kesser. The lowest level in the infinite light that is the source of the first level of what we'll call relatively finite light. It's not so much the light is finite, but the light is expressed in a finite way. And there's something called Chochmah. What's Chochmah? It's Chochmah. What isn't it? It's not Bina. It's Chochmah.
What was the other name?
What?
Finite light?
What?
What was the other name?
Of what?
The first level, finite light.
Iris. A finite? Chochma of Atzilus. Chochma of Atzilus. Reishis.
Where would this then fall in with like the comparison of like what would then be compared to the color itself, I guess? Are you saying that like Chachma would be considered clear, Chachma would be the color that's now being revealed?
Chochma is the color that's now being revealed. Up there in the infinite light, is there an expression of God's Chochma? Yes, absolutely. It's just not revealed. It's subsumed in infinite reality.
And then the book
Infinite doesn't just exist up there, it exists down here also. There's an infinite amount of places in space in between these two finite places in space. Now, once I reveal one, it's now a finite place in space. It's still part of an infinite set of points in space. Right? How many numbers between 1 and 1.1? Infinite amount of numbers. Okay, 1.01, it's a finite number. It's still part of an infinite set of numbers, but it itself is a finite number, right? True?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what 1.01 looks like. Okay, well, you sort of do because you probably had it on a tape measure, but okay. There's no such thing as 2 either. It's just 1 and 1. Okay, I said, but you and I called that 2. God tells us to do that. Count 10 animals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A Siri who caters. This one's over. It's my son. Put him up to the side. And give him to a Kain. Okay, so there's such a thing as counting, for sure. But in absolute reality, there's just a bunch of ones around. Right? Not how computers work, it's zeros and ones, right? Computers are just base 1, right? It's all zeros and ones. I think. You guys know more about that than me. Right? Okay. So Arech is that level in Keser, which is responsible for the first level of Or Mamale. So we'll call it finite, but I mean, Atzilus is the Eibishter, it's Kadosh Baruch Hu, but okay, it's Kadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself in a different way. So therefore, it's the function of Keser. It's what Keser does. What is Keser? A completely transcendent level. What does it do? It's the source of Chochmah. So that's Atik. What's Atik? Atik is called the panemius of Keser, what Keser is. Chitzonius is one of the explanations of the words that you see a lot in Chassidus, Chitzonius and panemius. Chitzonius is function, and panemius is being. What does something do? Well, where does it do that? Outside of itself. Chitzonius, an external. What is it? That's what's going on inside. That's its panemius. Right? It's possible to lose sight of panemius and only relate to chitzonius. I mean, that's basically the world's problem. There's a lot of problems, right? There's a lot of good things too. There's a lot of problems. Most of the problems all come down to one basic issue. Am I aware of the panemius of reality? Am I aware of being? Or do I only live in a world of function? If I only live in a world of function, I have no problem offing a 2-month-old fetus. No problem.
To do what?
To kill a 2-month-old fetus. Why? There's no function. It has as much being as anyone in this room. It's as alive as anyone in this room. It's a different reality of life than the life you and I experience, and there's no question about that. And there are times, Yiddishkeit is not anti-abortion, right? Like the Catholic Church, lahavdil, right? There are times when a woman is allowed to have an abortion, and we'll go to a Rav and say, this is what's happening, and we'll abort the baby in order to save the woman, right? Whether it's emotionally or physically, okay, that'll happen. Okay, but as a means of birth control, no. Why not? That baby's as alive as the mother. We put the mother's life before the baby's life. So if the baby is someone who's, so to speak, pursuing the mother to kill her, God forbid, then we're allowed to kill the baby in order to save the mother. Just like if someone's running after someone with a gun, right, and he's about to shoot him, you are allowed to shoot the pursuer before he kills the guy who he's pursuing. It's called a roideif. It's a din in halacha, and that's the basic understanding of how abortion works. Is the child endangering the mother? Then you're allowed to deal with the child. Okay? Now, there's no way of dealing with this child other than ending the pregnancy. Right? With the roideif, if you can shoot him in the legs and stop him from killing, you're obligated to shoot him in the legs as opposed to shooting him in the heart and killing him. Right? That doesn't necessarily apply to that person called a terrorist, because he has an existential desire to kill you all the time, and so just kill him already. No, seriously, I mean, that's one of the halachic diunim. I mean, the soldiers are dealing with this all the time. My wife used to work in the intensive care ambulance before she started working in a clinic, and so the intensive care ambulances used to have a doctor on them because doctors were paid so poorly they could afford to put a doctor on an intensive care ambulance. So, so they once went. They were called into the old city, and there were a bunch of magavnikim, army guys, and an Arab on the ground who had been shot in the chest. And my wife had to, do her best to bandage him up and keep him alive. It was pretty clear who shot him. So she looked up at the soldiers and said, "What happened?" And the guy who shot looked down and said, "I missed." So I missed. Once you miss, the laws of the army are you can't shoot him again. All right. Al pi Torah, that's an interesting question. So, but it's a question. It's not so pashut, right? Now, this guy's probably a known terrorist, and that's all he does is write about killing Jews and why. So, okay, you just blow off his head and be done with him. Okay, but it's not. It has to be understood what. But he said, "I missed."
Wait, what do you mean? He missed, but he hit him? Wait, missed?
He missed his heart. So now the
But
guy.
he can't shoot him again if he already shot him?
Not army rules for sure. Not Torah rules. So it depends on the situation.
It's really like neutralized.
He's new, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
He'll go to jail.
Gotcha.
That's army rules. I'm not talking Torah rules. Torah rules, that depends who the guy is and what the situation is. Someone's running after someone he hates and he's angry at him, and you can stop him by shooting him in the legs. You're hired to shoot him in the legs. Someone is a serial killer and he does this every single day, so then shoot him before he kills anybody else. Right? If he's running after someone. If he's not, you're not allowed to shoot him. If he's eating breakfast in the cafe, it's not so simple, Al pi Torah.
Where the guy's a persistent threat, the Torah would say execute him after he's been.
That's a hard one. I'm not sure. I mean you have to ask a real Rav. That's a serious halacha question, because you're talking about murder if it's not.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm saying it's it's not. Oh well, yeah, let's just off them all. Whoa. There's halacha about all this, how you do it, right? The Torah is not overly sympathetic to, so-called Palestinian terrorists. The so-called is the Palestinian part, not the terrorist part.
You cannot compare them to Amalek.
They're not Amalek.
I understand that they are not this descendant of Amalek, but they are somebody who remember.
But the
They
Torah
also-
says that about Amalek, and we don't know who Amalek is, so you can't just decide, okay, I'm going to
No, but I read something that everybody who give you the impression that a nation that's trying to weaken you and showing that you can attack the Jews, you should go before them.
It's not an easy halachic discussion, right? I don't think anybody would have any halachic issue with what happened yesterday in Qatar. 100%. Blow them all up. 100%. No problem. Kill Hitler? Kill Hitler. What's the issue? The Nazi soldier? Yeah, kill him. The SS guard? Kill him. That's not such a problem. You happen to be walking the street in Gaza and you see some Hamasnik walk by on his way to get a pita, blow his head off. I don't think anybody would have any issue lahalacha with that. He's a roidef. He's a member of a group that's dedicated to killing us, so there's no problem with that. Right? Okay, but what about the 10-year-old kid walking around in Gaza? That's a real issue, right?
Talking about the terrorists.
Yeah, no, 100%. But, Amalek, you're talking about everybody.
Not
That's
as a
different. Right? That's different.
What's the third level?
All right. What? Yeah, we're getting there. So the second is Atik, Pneumius of Kesser. What Kesser is. What is Kesser? Transcendent, infinite, godly reality. That's what it is. What does it do? It's also the source of that first level of so-called, again, everything's relative, finite expression of godliness, 10 spheres. Elam Atzilus. Elam Atzilus is a word of God, a world of godliness. It's not creation, it's creator, so to speak. What's happening in Elam Atzilus? God is, so to speak, turning himself into a creator. And where does creation happen? Malchus of Atzilus, which is called Ayin, not created reality, gives birth to Chochmah of Bria, which is Yesh, created reality. Yesh mi'ayin. What's the ayin that gives birth to the yesh? Chochmah Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus. Okay? Simple. So what's Atik? The Pneumius of Kesser. What's Rud Law? And now we get to the point where we understand the line that we just read in our Maamer. What's Rud Law? Reisha the essence of the soul. In your soul is the essence of the soul. Right? What is that? It's called Reisha de lo yoda v'lo is yoda, the head that doesn't know and isn't known. I once asked someone who knows a lot of Chassidus, and is a great spreader of Chassidus in the world. Happens to be a friend of mine, but he knows a lot. I once asked him, what doesn't it know and what isn't known? The head that doesn't know and isn't known. What doesn't it know and what isn't known, right? I mean, what's pshat in that line? He said an amazing thing. That level of reality, and now you understand why we took all this time to talk about it. That level of reality is the place in your neshama where it doesn't know if it's a neshama or if it's the Eibishter. That level of you that's rooted in Atzmus, so you're indistinguishable from Atzmus itself. Is this a neshama or is this the Eibishter? Whoa. It's as if, I'm bringing an example though. In Gashmi it's hard to put, but imagine in the sun. Now I understand the sun is not a piece of, Gashmi is like this thing, so it ends there, right? Okay, to say it, but we'll talk about it in those terms, right? So in the sun. So the sun there is light in the sun. The Alter Rebbe talks about that. There's light in the sun. Okay, say that. But that light is completely bottled to the sun, and we don't talk about it. Right? That's one of the mashalim the Rebbe brings to explain the idea of bittul. Okay. But basically the sun is not light. The sun is a ma'or. It's a luminary. What comes out of the sun? Light. Right? The stuff that comes out of the sun is called light. The sun itself is not called light. It's the luminary that is the source of that light. But it's not light. Again, there is light in the sun, but the sun itself, it's not light, it's the sun. What comes out of it? Sunlight comes out of the sun. Okay, so now, there we are, hanging out in the sun. Go at night. We're hanging out at the sun, otherwise you burn up. We're hanging out in the sun. And imagine, there isn't such a thing, but imagine there's a place where all of a sudden, sun turns into sunlight, right? Right now, all of a sudden, so this is the sun, and right over here, what's right over here? Sunlight. Right? Now, can you make that distinction up there? No. So what's that right there? Is it sun or is it sunlight? I don't know, right? Maybe it's like this is also sun. I don't know. They say, I think they say this, right? If I'm wrong, please correct me. I never learned physics seriously. My wife puts books in the bathroom that I try to read, but I can never get past page 20. The first 20 pages are astounding, and then they start getting too confusing for me. But they say it's like a candle when we look. Next to the wick, there's a little bit of darkness, and then there's the light. And Chassidus talks about this also. A little bit of darkness, and then the light is around. So also they say around the sun, there's actually a place devoid of light, and then light outside of that. Just like when you look at a flame, right, there's a place in the middle where there's not light, and the light is on the outside. Well, I'm saying, well, where's the light coming from? Is that coming from the wick? Okay. I mean, the fact that the wick is burning? Okay. But that place that we just said, in our imagination up there in the sun, is that sun or is that sunlight? It's so powerfully one with the sun that you can't tell. It might be so powerfully one with the sun that it is the sun. All right, you really can't. Okay, you're in the Shama up there in Atzmus, and that's called Rud Law. Okay, so now it's 8:30 already. We have to stop soon, but I want to see it in the Maamer, right? Because the Rebbe is now saying something extremely important. It's a whole new tack in the Maamer. So let's start from Zion again. Yesh leimer dal yedei shagilui b'yud gemamidas arachamim me'erer u'megala. It arouses and reveals haratzon apnimi d'Yisrael, our inner ratzon, our true desire, which is elokus. Sharatzon d'Yisrael be'elokus hu. Our desire is elokus. What do we really want? Elokus. Why? Hu lefishem mushrashim ba'atzmus, because they're rooted in atzmus, third level. And what power of the soul is that? You remember? We didn't do this. I want to do it now. Tzvi asked me to. I said we'll get to it, but we didn't. But we just did. Ratzain is the first level. What's Ratzain? Ratzain is a super conscious power of you that is constantly being revealed in your conscious reality. What are you constantly becoming aware of? What you want. Is what you want part of conscious you? No. How do you know? You don't have control over it. Right? Immediate control. We talked about that. You don't have an immediate control over your will. You can't say, don't want that. We don't want that. I don't have control over whether I want it or not. I have control over whether I'm going to think about it, speak about it, or do it, but I don't have control over not wanting it. Not immediate control. Over time, I might be able to get rid of that desire or create that desire. There are, what do they call it? Acquired tastes. You grew up and everybody decides that, dry red wine is important to like, so you've worked on yourself to enjoy dry red wine. Okay, an acquired taste. Children don't like dry red wine. They don't like beer either. Okay, it's an acquired taste. What?
So Northern Eastern Europe.
In Eastern Europe, children like beer. Czechoslovakia, right? Czechoslovakia drinks about twice as much beer as any other country in the world. There's a table. Britain's like way different compared to Czechoslovakia. Okay. So, Ratzon is the part of superconscious or subconscious, but we'll call it superconscious. Superconscious you that is constantly making itself known in conscious you. You're constantly becoming aware of your desires. Consciously, you're thinking about them. Now, then you might decide, I don't want to think about that, and you work hard to get it out of there. Okay. Usually we call that subconscious, right? The lower ones and the higher ones. So the stuff coming from a place we want it to come from, those superconscious desires, once they flip into my head, I'm very excited. Wow, beautiful. I want to relate to God. I actually am I'm consciously aware of that desire. Okay. That's the level of Ketzer that is constantly finding expression in Chochmah. That's at it. Then there's a completely transcendent level. That's tanug. Right? I'm not so much aware, I'm aware of the fact that this thing gives me pleasure, and I'm conscious of that pleasure, but I don't understand in any way, shape, or form why it gives me pleasure. And my relationship to the pleasure is generally that I want that thing because it gives me pleasure, and I become aware of the desire for the thing. Why it gives me pleasure, I have no idea. Right? But I know why I want it, because it gives me pleasure. Why does it give me pleasure? I don't know. It just does. Chocolate pudding tastes good. Okay. And then Etzim. And what did we say that was? Ratzon, Tainu. What was the third level of Keser? Emunah. Oh, that part of your soul is completely one with the Eibishter. That's Emunah. That's where your Emunah comes from. Emunah isn't something that you have to acquire. Emunah is something that you have. You just have to reveal it in your conscious self. Mm-hmm. Our Avodah is to bring about the revelation of our Emunah in what we call our Das, in our conscious reality. Every single, what do Chazal say? Every single Jew is a Maamin ben Maamin. He's a believer, the son of a believer. Why? Because you have a power in their soul called Emunah. Just like you have a power in your soul called sight. Where does the power of soul called sight clothe itself? In this thing here called the eyes and the optic nerves that go back to the optical center of the brain. So if you didn't have the power of sight in your neshama, in your nefesh, so you could have the kli, but there'd be no light, so you wouldn't express it. If you had the light but no kli, it also wouldn't express itself. That's called someone who's dead. Dead people have eyes. They have, that's where there's a kli and there's no light. They have eyes, but there's no power of sight being clothed in those eyes anymore because their soul has left their body. The eyes are there, the ears are there, the mouth is there, the nose is there. How come they can't see or smell or hear? Well, because eyes don't see and noses don't smell. Souls see. What do souls use to see in Gashmias? It's called eyes. What do souls use to smell in Gashmias? Called a nose. What do souls use to hear in Gashmias? Called an ear. When the soul leaves the body, so the kli is still there, just the ore is missing. No more light, no more energy. The energy comes from the soul, not from the body. The nose doesn't produce smell. The nose is a kli to allow for the power of smell that exists in the soul to express itself in physical reality. Once the soul leaves the body, so then the animal soul and the godly soul, both, right? Same thing applies to every human. Soul leaves the body, they don't see anymore. Why not? There's eyes in there. Should be 20/20 vision. This person could see like a hawk.
If somebody cannot see or smell, then it's only the kli. The problem is only in kli.
That's a very interesting question. Sometimes it's not, and then therefore sometimes you hear these stories about people going to tzaddikim, and all of a sudden they start to see again. And how's that work? Oh, because evidently in that person the problem wasn't necessarily the kli. It might have been the soul was somehow blocked up, and the tzaddik will know how to unblock that. Tzaddik's gonna have less time, less. He's more an expert in the soul than he's an expert in the body, so to speak, right? Okay, so if it's in physical issues, so go to an ophthalmologist. He'll fix you up, hopefully. And they can. The stuff they do now is unbelievable. Right? 3D, what do they call them? Printing, right? 3D printing. Right? So they print corneas now. They're working on they're working on the cornea actually working. They're getting there. They can print one. It's just the work. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. There's also the in the physicality itself. There's the deeper levels of the physicality, the genetic level of the physicality, right? So you can, it might be that the issue is a genetic issue, and yes, it's true, it's expressing itself in this particular part of the body for whatever reason, but if I can get to the genetics of it, I can solve the issue. That's really where medicine is going. Now that's scary also, but the positive expressions of that are just incredible. The thing they're working on, as far as I understand, the thing they're working on most right now, because it's almost all genetic, and it affects between 12 and 15% of every woman in the world, is breast cancer. And if they do that, wow. Talking about over 10% of the women in the world are affected by that at some point in their life. And if they catch it early enough, Baruch Hashem. If not, it's a real killer. It's not a joke. Okay, that would be astounding. It's almost all genetic. There's a Jewish gene. It's called the BRCA gene. It's a Jewish gene and a non-Jewish gene. There's a specific gene that only affects Jewish women. The BRCA gene, BRCA, whatever that stands for. But there's also a non-Jewish, an everybody else BRCA gene, which Jewish women can also get. A lot of Jewish women get tested for the Jewish BRCA gene, but they should also get tested for the other one, because it is possible they could have much less than the rest of the population, because Baruch Hashem, we have our own particular terrible, horrible thing. But if they can figure out how to deal with that they can identify it genetically. You do a genetic test and it gets identified, so then that woman knows that she's going to have to be checked out every 6 months until she's 40 or 45, and then probably undergo some fairly serious operations in order to make sure that it doesn't affect her for the next 80 years of her life. Hopefully, you can make it through her childbearing years, checking and checking and checking and checking and checking every 6 months. It's heavy stuff. It's really, but they can check it out genetically whether a person is in that category or not. It can pass through a father or a mother. A father can have the BRCA gene. They're not sure what its effect is on men. They're maybe it affects some type of that disease showing up in different places in the men. They're not so sure about that. But in women, it's terrible. So it's a check that every woman should get at a certain age. And if she's positive, so then her parents should get checked. Where is it coming from? And if the parents are carriers, so then all the kids should get checked at a certain age. The men, they say about 40. Women, right away, next day, get it checked out. God's wild. Okay, 3 more words and we're stopping. Nasa ilui b'yidgim misrachim. The Rebbe just said an amazing thing. By virtue of the fact that the Yudgim Amidas Arachimim, we'll have to talk about this at great length, and we will, because the Rebbe is going to talk about it at great length. By virtue of the fact that there's a revelation of the Yudgim Amidas Arachimim in Elul, that triggers in you and I our essential love for the Eibishter. The fact that that's what happens as a result of the revelation of the Yudgim Amidas Arachimim brings about an elevation in the Yudgim Amidas Arachimim themselves, meaning an elevation in godly reality. That level of godliness is elevated to a higher level of godly reality. What does that mean? We'll see that Monday morning. I assume there's a Farbrengen tonight. There will be no class tomorrow because there's no class. Not just because I'm not here, but because there's no class tomorrow. So there's a Farbrengen tonight. Sunday morning there'll be no Chassidus because of late Slichas. So the next official Chassidus class will be Monday, and Bezrat Hashem, everybody will be here. I'll be back. Gemara, we'll talk about Gemara. About our class in the lounge in the Milan airport. Should be fun. Leaving this afternoon, right after Gemara Shir, to go to Farbrengen, Central Europe. Not your neck of the woods, no. Down where everything really happens. Down there in Central Europe. Well, actually, I guess that's not true. Vienna is Central Europe, and then I'm going to Milan for Shabbat, so that's anything but Central Europe. It's whatever it is. Whatever Milan is. It's wonderful in here. It's deliciously cold.